So we've had quite a big day today.
Shit's getting real, isn't it?
It is. Well, I think it was probably the realest day so far in what is admittedly a government that's not even a month old, which was Rachel Reeves kind of delivering this financial statement. And it had been trailed a lot. And there'd been quite a lot of, and I have to say, I shared this initially, thinking, she was going to say, as indeed she did, that the books were worse than she'd expected. Now, this is the oldest trick in the book of an incoming Chancellor of the Exchequer. You open the books and you sort of, like Billy Connolly, go, shocked and stunned,
Clutch your pearls,
about things that were known very publicly. So
and the state of the economy was known, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the broad state was, but so I had kind of thought this is just going to be a bit of political theatre. I wonder what the substance will be, in addition to the act. But what's interesting is that it does appear that she's right, and that the numbers were that she sort of uncovered when she got into the Treasury were not as advertised to the OBR, the Office for Budget Responsibility, which has now launched an inquiry to find out why it was hoodwinked. Its chair, Richard Hughes, has written a letter saying, we want to find out why we weren't told the truth. So this is quite a big. I mean, they're not wanting for stains, the last Conservative government, but this is quite a big deal.
But when Jeremy Hunt says that, that's a load of old hogwash.
Well,
is that a load of old hogwash?
Well, I mean, listening to I think what is definitely true is, and obviously it's an area of policy that the Tories led on, so it's an important one, is that there was an overspend of, 6.4 billion quid on asylum policy, which, as we all know, has not been working.
800 million of which
was Rwanda.
Bloody flights that never...
Right, and that had only been advertised as 400 million. So already we're dealing with serious numbers.
Yeah.
There was 1.6 billion in the transport budget that wasn't. And then there were, I think for security reasons, she couldn't be exact about unfunded military assistance to Ukraine. She said she'd honour that. But clearly, you get a picture of sort of, which is really no surprise when you think of the kind of government the Tories were leading and what we thought of it.
Yeah.
But it really is. It was worse than we thought.
But they were like the drunks in the bookies chasing mad losses, weren't they?
A bit, absolutely.
The hope that a greyhound was going to pull them out the crap.
A sort of pyramid scheme of a government, a Ponzi scheme government. And what was interesting was some of the things that she ditched were kind of highlights of the populist era of the Conservative government in its last year. So, we all remember Boris Johnson getting the cabinet on camera to shout 40 hospitals. Yes. Well, none of that's happened, and they've dumped the whole thing. And Sunak, in his very strange final conference speech, announcing that he was going to introduce a new 18-year-old exam called the Advanced British Standard, which was not funded.
Yeah.
And so they've got rid of that. And actually, I feel a bit sorry for the kids who listened and teachers who'd listened to that and thought, right, that'll be coming down my way.
Hopefully they were smart enough to know that was.
Yes and no. I mean, I assumed that it would be a kind of 5-year. So maybe if you were a 13-year-old, you thought, well, I won't be doing A levels anyway. Yeah. So that's where it was. She's now saying 22 billion quid black hole. All of this has given her political cover for some things that were choices rather than discoveries. The most salient of which is she and Starmer have clearly decided they need, and they're right, to end the industrial disputes of the public sector.
Yeah.
So they're going with the recommendations of the public sector pay bodies, which means 3.5 billion if it's confined to nurses and teachers, 10 billion if it goes to the broader public sector workforce, and then junior doctors was settled today it'll be a 22.3%.
Well, hopefully they've got to vote on it, haven't they?
They've got to vote on it, but I think they'll take it. It's over 2 years, and that will cost a fair amount.
So just as a slight diversion on that, it's interesting, isn't it? Because the accusation will be from the Tories is that the junior doctors have been very political in their negotiations because they've settled for something that was on the table pretty much.
Yes.
With the last government. Let's assume they do settle. Is that a fair accusation?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that this is sort of four-dimensional chess a bit, and I think that what they're trying to do today is first, and correctly it seems, to suggest that the last Tory government left behind an unholy mess.
Yeah. By the way, I should say that I don't think there's anything wrong in the junior doctors being political in their negotiations, especially with a government that fucked the NHS.
Given that, she was selling a fairly, dark message, to use that moment to say, actually, these public sector strikes are not simply the acts of crazed militants. They're the acts of people whose pay has dropped in value in real terms.
And who care about the services they're providing.
And we value them.
Yeah.
I mean, if a Labour government doesn't value the public sector employee, workforce, what's it there for?
Exactly, yeah.
So I don't blame them for doing that at all, but I think it was necessary to get it out of the way. And it is always a choice. So they'll take some heat over it, but frankly, so what? The Conservative Party at the moment is off with the fairies. I mean, they've just announced their 6 nominees for the leadership contest, and it is just...
Have you seen this yellow card scheme?
Yeah, the yellow card scheme if they badmouth each other, and Suella Braverman has sort of, said that she's
thrown it out the pram.
Armour-plated grenades out of her pram, saying she's not going to be leader because no one is. I think the implication is that no one is as bold and brilliant as she is.
No one is quite as Tory as she is.
Yeah. So that's them. So the notion that the Tories will give them a hard time is not one that will send, I think, chills going down the spine of the Prime Minister in a way that it might his forebears. Even Tony Blair with Hague, I think, would have been a bit more alarmed. So there's that. And then, there are some spiky things like she's chosen to restrict the winter fuel allowance to people who are entitled to pension credit. It's a couple of £100, £300. Means a lot to people who are living on the poverty line. And as with all means-tested things, there'll be a cliff edge and it'll be difficult. And, it will panic, understandably, some people who are counting every penny as the winter approaches. So that's a difficult thing for a Labour government to do.
But the message has been that people who are in receipt of these benefits will carry on receiving but as you say, there will be you move into that margin of people who are just on the edge.
That's the problem.
It'll bite.
And there'll be a lot of them who are not wealthy at all, or not even middle, they're not remotely middle class, but they're not in receipt of pension credit. So that was quite a bitter pill, and I think that it will. We will hear more. We'll hear more about that.
And maybe rightly so, because again, as you said earlier, if a Labour government's not looking after the public sector, then what's it there for? But also, pensioners are
that's the thing,
right up there, aren't they?
She's obviously making it clear that there are cuts ahead, and this is, I suspect, a canary down a coal mine to see if. How welfare cuts or means testing of welfare cuts, welfare works, how it goes down. Watch this space, I suspect. Some bits of it I found implausible, like asking departments to find cuts of £3 billion this year, but the usual list of don't talk to consultants, don't bring in consultants. Like go down on comms, don't spend so much on stapling. I mean,
now because you're right, from a business point of view, we are now almost into the 8th month.
Right.
So you've got 4 months
in which to find,
so 6 billion, is it? 3 billion
from this year.
But if you're annualising those cuts, you're looking at 8 billion.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's more to come, but they have to actually find 3 billion. I mean, I can't see it happening.
I mean, so you've got a month or 6 weeks of, unless you're just saying to consultants, we're going to break contracts, you're out of, some of these contracts will have 3-month release clauses.
Absolutely.
So you're right, that does seem utterly implausible.
I find it I don't get that. I'm sure they'll try and explain it, but so far I don't understand how they propose to do that. And the other thing I think that in terms of the ideas behind this government, the endless question, what is Starmerism? I think that they've made cuts to, not huge cuts, but some cuts to infrastructure projects. And I think on principle, cutting infrastructure and capital projects to make up shortfalls in current spending is a bad thing to do. And it's particularly bad if you're selling yourself as a growth government, a productivity government, a building government. Yeah. The markets will not like that. And I don't think that, but more importantly, I think that it undercuts one of the key messages at the heart of what they've been planning.
Because the money that, I mean, it's not just like, okay, so we're not going to have a road under Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the money that would have been spent on that was jobs and investment.
That's right.
And wealth creation.
The Stonehenge case, which is obviously the one that will attract most
headlines,
is a bad example because a lot of people feel very strongly that there shouldn't be a tunnel, right?
We've done with that one for 3,500 years.
Exactly. Exactly. But you're right, you see, that every project like that's cancelled, there's a kind of shrapnel spread everywhere, in terms of costs and jobs lost and things like that. And there are lots of smaller things that have been cancelled today that will have undoubtedly that effect.
It's the opportunity cost, isn't it?
It's the opportunity cost. So what we need reassurance on, and that's why the budget, which has been announced for October the 30th, and the spending review, which is going to have to be done at a pretty fast clip, will offer answers, we hope, to all of these things. Is, are they going to be seriously a building government? I mean, this is the throat clearing, the prelude. Gets a permission. It sets up the battlefield, which is we have inherited a binfire, and it seems they have. So okay, but it leaves so many questions unanswered. In that budget, this budget. I mean, we touched on this a bit in Sunday's Q&A, which was, if not now, when?
Yeah.
Is this going to be a really big, consequential, risk-taking budget like Geoffrey Howe's in 81 or Nigel Lawson's in 88? It's remembered for many years as a biggie. Yeah. Or is it just going to be more sort of hair shirt demonstration to the markets that Labour can be trusted with money?
Well, yes, but you can say that another way, which is like Labour can be trusted with austerity.
Well, that's
to carry that on.
Yeah, I mean,
which is bad news.
I mean, she talked about spending cuts and tax rises, right? Now, I accept that was always going to be a likely outcome, but the division, where does most of it come from? Yeah. Is it going to be from tax rises or is it going to be from spending cuts? Yeah. Because it will be politically disastrous for Labour if its first big fiscal event is mostly about cuts.
Yeah. Whatever the narrative.
Whatever the narrative.
Because there's a story. There are two things going on. There's a story. There's a narrative. But then there's life as well. There's real life. And the real life aspect of it, we've said on this podcast time and time again, and Starmer's alluded to it and said it directly, is that we need national renewal. Right. We need national growth. We need now that's got to stop being an abstract concept and mean something.
It totally does. And this is the moment before, crucially, October the 30th is a few days before the new Tory leader will be announced. Yeah. And the presidential election will be held in America, which I think will divert us to, and we can talk about in a minute. But this is not their last chance, but their best chance to really lay down a marker as to what is the nature of their courage.
Yeah.
Are they just going to be technocratic managerialists?
Yeah.
As everyone has feared, or actually, is there a sort of spark of, the Attlee, the Churchill,
of bravado, imagination,
a risk taker? Is he a risk taker?
Well, also the thing that will be absolutely going off in the back of their heads like a fire alarm is the effect of the markets after Liz Truss.
Yeah,
and they will be feeling, if we say anything too bold, then we could be in
you're absolutely right.
We could be in cataclysm territory.
Right. You're absolutely
so
right.
There's got to be. I'm not looking for a happy medium because I don't think we are in a space where that's going to be enough. But there's got to be boldness that you can buy into. You know?
I mean, the markets obviously won't want this government to be building up too big a deficit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it wants to know that the pound is worth investing in, that the country's worth investing in. And it isn't at the moment, because we're becoming a very shop-worn and skeletal country in terms of our facilities, our infrastructure. You know, a lot was obviously HS2 was cancelled last year, but a lot is getting cancelled now as well.
Yeah.
We haven't as a country got a reputation for stability, and stability is what investors love most. I mean, that was actually one of the many things that was wrong with Rishi Sunak mucking about with the net zero targets, because investors hate that kind of messing around for political end. What are you actually doing? And I think that look, is Starmer serious about, quotes, a decade of renewal? If he is, then in this budget, she should indicate, Rachel Reeves, that they are going to raise wealth taxes. Now, it may not all happen, it won't happen on that day, but they are committed to making use of all of the unrealized wealth that there is in fixed assets in this country.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree with that.
They have promised to not raise income tax, national insurance and VAT except for private schools. They won't break that. But there's a lot of latitude, you know, to bring capital gains tax in line with income tax, to remove the reliefs on inheritance tax, and to start thinking seriously about a wealth tax.
Yeah.
That's not the work of one day, but what is the work of one day is to use that opportunity to signal to the whole world, this is not, you know, we really are moving on from the Tory era, and not just the Tory era of the last 14 years, but the Tory era that started in 1979. You know,
that's right.
New rules apply.
Yeah.
And it's up to them. This is totally down to human agency.
Yeah,
they've got they've got to go over the summer and have a really, really big think about what they want to do with this huge majority.
Listen, also, besides the abstract and the reality of life, and things have got to change and get better.
Yeah.
We do need a better narrative. People have got to feel better about it as well. They do need to, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves will find out very shortly how thin phrases like a decade of renewal wear on people if there's nothing to back it up.
By the time you're in government, they mean nothing.
Nothing.
What people will be interested in now is, you know, and by the way, they have done a brave thing by saying it's broken, you know, saying the NHS is broken.
Yeah.
That's good, because it is.
But
the corollary is they have to actually do something about it.
You see, Wes Streeting, I think, has got the tone absolutely right.
He has.
Because he is vigorous and sparky, and he's ambitious and bold, and he says
he's heretical as well.
Exactly. He says things that make you prick up your ears. You know, he really. It's like, wow, okay. And he's got a plan, and you look at the guy and you think there's energy and ambition there.
Yeah.
What we don't want from Rachel Reeves is dour competence.
No, not at all. I mean, look, chancellors will always be looking for excuses not to spend, but it's worth bearing in mind that Gordon Brown, as chancellor, he's known as the Iron Chancellor, but he actually did spend a lot of money in the end, and it did a lot of good.
Yeah.
But
he came at it like a bull, you know.
He came at it like a bull. Now, this is her opportunity to do the same. I mean, what we need to find out is whether Starmer and Reeves have that kind of almost reckless capacity that Blair and Brown had as a duo in competition with one another to really change the country. And I think it's the jury's out, and it will be out. Yeah. But that we now know, kind of D-Day is October the 30th. On that day, we will discover what kind of government we elected in July.